Today we're talking about midweight survival knives under $100. So I want to share the top 4 midweight survival knives under $100 in this video with you today. Many of these can also be tricked out, so you can get into a good knife for under $100, then over time invest a little bit more, get upgraded sheaths, get upgraded handle scales. We're going to talk about all of that today, but really, if you just need a good, solid midweight survival knife, you like day hikes, you like camping, you like backpacking, you don't want this giant, massive machete, and you don't need this little tiny, bushcraft knife. You want that midweight level knife that you could survive with. I want to share the 4 that I love and that I've tested out for years and used for years and that I can recommend to you. So this is just one of them. We're going to see what they can do, what they can't do, pros and cons to hopefully help you out when you're on that budget of under $100. So guys, let's go ahead and jump to it and see what these blades can do. Boom, here are our 4 players today. The 4 knives that you can get out of the box for under $100, plus some customization aspects to these knives that we're going to discuss as well. I'm going to introduce each one here. We're going to talk a lot concept, pros, cons, and hopefully help you decide which of these 4 would be the best setup for you. So what we have up here is the Rat Model 7 from Ontario Knife Company, coming in at about $70 is what you're going to pay for that. All of these are going to be USA made. All of these will be 1095 high carbon steel. Then next up here we have the Utica Cutlery B6. This is the B6, and this is going to run you about $70 from what I have seen. This is only available right now on Blade HQ, possibly on Amazon down the line, but about $70 for this bad boy. Then we have the BK7 running about $80, and we have the K-Bar Turok, and this guy's going to be running you about $80 as well. So I want to answer the question real quick, what makes a midweight survival knife? You hear that a lot here on the channel. If you watch regularly and you're a current subscriber, if you're new to the channel, I just want to kind of share this concept with you real quick. To me, and it's just my terminology, okay, so that we're all on the same page and all the same profile. Now there are really compact fixed blades that are around like 4 to 5 inches that would fit into possibly a survival scenario, but to me they're a little too small, and I would call those small survival knives. Then you have those big, large survival knives that are like machetes and choppers. We're looking at like the SC Hungalis. We're talking about the BK9. We could argue possibly some of the Spec Plus line, the RTAC 2, the K-Bar Jaras. These knives are big and large and heavy. And so for me, what a midweight survival knife is usually between 6 and 7 inches in blade length. And all of these are going to come in at about 6 to 6.5 cutting edge, and then about 7 inches overall blade length. And then right around the 12-ounce weight as well. They're between 12 to 11 to 10, around in that kind of range of ounces. So that and the concept with that is that they are just heavy enough to do almost any task, but they're not so heavy that you're probably not going to carry them on a day hike or a light excursion, and they're not so large that you're not going to put them in your backpack, particularly if it's like a small day pack, that this knife can be taken with you anywhere and everywhere when you're out in the outdoors and do almost any task required of it. It may not do it well, but it can do it. The final thing is, for me, for it to really truly be a survival knife, it must be a full tang, exposed tang knife. All these knives have handle scales on either side, and you can see the tang all the way through. The reason for that is basically reliability. Something that has a stick tang and has rubberized craton or a molded plastic polymer over it, though usually very strong, the likelihood of ever breaking is very slim. There is that possibility, and if it does loosen up, if the rubber starts to peel, crack, loosen up in some way, it's very difficult for you to continue to use the knife. Whereas with these, if the handle scale was to crack, loosen up, whatever, I either can tighten it down manually, or if I have to, if it's damaged, then I can remove the handle scales and just either continue to hold the knife because it still has a very large tang, or wrap it in paracord that I usually have on me, often on the lanyard, and give me the grip that I need. And exposed full tangs like this with handle scales usually have the strongest type of tang. It's very strong in there. The tangs are larger, so that means that the knife goes all the way through and it doesn't get very narrow like a rat tail tang, or just a thinner tang overall like an SRK or a Gerber strong arm, or some of those other knives that are out there that are very reliable and strong, but they just don't have quite the survivable capability that the knives in front of us do. So as I said, all these will come in at under $100 price point easily, and we are going to look at a lot of modifications that you can also do down the line, and whether or not that's something that makes sense to you to purchase a knife knowing you're going to modify it down the line, or something that you just want one and done, never think about it again. Want to hit all that with you, show you performance with these knives. Okay, so as I said, 1095, that's a rust capable steel. I'm meaning it will rust pretty easily on you. That's why it has these black coatings on here. 1095 though is very tough, very durable, can take a lot of abuse, and it's very easy to sharpen up in the field. Literally a ceramic rod, or even possibly a smooth river stone can get a really good edge back on these knives. Now basically we're looking at two that have full flat grinds, two that have saber grinds. The difference between these is significant in that full flat grinds, like on the Rat Model 7 and on the B6 from Utica, are really good slicers. They're really good for food prep. They're really good for finer cutting tasks, carving, whittling, feather stick making, notches for triggers and traps if you were catching game or food, different things like that. They're going to slice really well because it's just a flat grind. The downside is, unlike these saber grinds over here, which have a flat and then they transition to a secondary flat here, they tend to chop and baton better. They split wood easier. They take out chunks when you are hacking and chopping. If you're making a spear, if you're having to prepare firewood, these will remove chunks out of wood faster and won't bind up like these full flat grinds will. So that's not to say that these full flat grinds can't chop and baton. You just don't notice the performance quite as much, and that doesn't mean that these guys can't carve and whittle. They absolutely can. You'll just notice that the full flats can do it a little bit easier. The final thing is that saber grinds tend to have a stronger tip because there's this reinforcement going all the way to the tip. Not by a lot, but you will notice it. Saber grinds tend to have stronger tips, whereas full flats just don't quite have the strength because it's just a flat piece of metal. So if you do think that that is something that you're concerned about, maybe you've broken tips off of knives in the past, saber grinds will be a little bit stronger. So as we look at all four of these, the top two are going to have finger choils, which means that you can get really nice and close up on the blade. So you're going to be able to do that finer controlled work really, really well, that I like a lot. These are all going to be about 3/16 of an inch thick, and all again have about 6-inch cutting edges. And then this one, you know, it's a 7-inch blade, but you're having about an inch on that finger choil. Then the Utica B6, again, another finger choil. The choil is a little bit smaller than on the Rat 7, and the blade is a little bit shorter from spine to edge. So that is something to consider as well. And it will have more of like a clip, you know, combat style to it. So pros and cons, a lot of it's just aesthetic, but mostly that the performance is going to be very similar between the Utica and the Ontario. Then as we look here at the Becker BK7, we have that black traction coating again. You do have that clip or swedge there that will be better for combat tasks, stabbing tasks. It will damage your batoning stick if you are splitting wood that way a little bit quicker, not by a lot. And then you are getting that saber grind and that nice belly. No finger choil, so you're a little further away from the cutting edge, but you are going to have a really nice controllable blade still when you're using the knife. And then finally we have the Turok down here, and the Turok is going to have a giant swedge. It's massive, almost the whole length of the blade, just enough flat right there to rest my thumb. No thumb ramp to worry about like on the Becker BK7 that we'll talk about during ergonomics. No finger choil either. So again, you're about 3/4 of an inch away, still very controllable, but that swedge will damage your batoning stick again, better for stabbing and penetrating, more of a combat feel than say a woods feel. So that is something to consider as well. This will have that more piercing dagger-esque blade, whereas these have large sweeping bellies on the other three knives. There's pros and cons to that. They all will perform very similar for the task that we're looking at a survival knife to do, which is basic, you know, woodscraft, you know, preparing a fire, preparing a shelter, you know, cleaning game, processing food, that type of thing. These will all perform very similarly. It just, some of it is based off of blade shape and your preference. Now, one downside to having a full tang exposed tang knife is that oftentimes you have to sacrifice the handle ergonomics. And you know, this is a survival knife. You may be using it for quite a long period of time. So that's something that you want to consider and take into consideration when you're picking out your survival knife. And so what usually will tend to happen is either it'll be very ergonomic and rounded and smooth, but it will be very slick, or it'll be very squared off and clunky, but give you better traction. And so I'm hoping just as a whole that the knife community begins to step that game up and give us not only contouring, but better traction as well. And I'm just gonna kind of show that to you here. So the first one off down here, the Turok, what we have is really nice contouring, very rounded, very comfortable, no hot spots or issues to worry about, just kind of a straight off the back handle, very natural in that regard. Good guard right here for, again, more stabbing tasks, and that nice flat point right there, so I can absolutely do push cuts all day long. I can do reverse bushcraft style cuts, and there is some like pocking or like skin texture, so there's a pretty good amount of grip on these plastic or polymer style handle scales. Next up here, we have the Becker BK7. Now, to keep it at that $80 price point, it's going to come with these black polymer Gryvery style handle scales that are very rounded and ergonomic, but they're very slick, and it feels like you're basically holding onto a Nalgene bottle. So I did upgrade them to, I believe, and I'll annotate it in, but it's either like VZ or ZV handle scales that are G10, very contoured, but give me the traction that these ones will not, and just cool color combinations. So it's very rounded, very full in the hand. It's going to feel great for long periods of time and give me the grip that I want. But these are about $50 to $60. So now I just bumped the knife up to like $140 just with handle scale. So that's something to consider. Things to note with the ergonomics on this blade in particular is I found that the thumb ramp when you're doing like woodscraft tends to be a hindrance. A lot of people will grind that off and strip the coating. That is a possibility that you can do. What I've found is that I rest my finger behind the handle scale right here, and then I can do, you know, feather sticking and push cuts without too much difficulty, or I can just reach over and do that type of motion. So that is just something to note. The other knives won't have that thumb ramp, and it can sometimes, depending on the grip and how long you're cutting, be a little bit of a hindrance with woodscraft, but give you good traction for harder tasks. Next up is the B6 from Utica. This is kind of a mix match micarta material. Out of the box, it comes with that, giving me good traction. They have given us some little hills and valleys, radius, the handle scales well, giving us a little bit of a hook, kind of like the Becker, to kind of keep it in your hand when you are doing hacking if need be, and a little bit of blocky jimping that I did not notice as a problem ever with the performance of the knife, but it is squared off. You can just see that there. It's pretty blocky. It's a little bit better than some of the other ones we're going to look at here in just a moment, but it is something that I did notice that was, you know, I mean, it's just not as contoured as these two K-bars are down here. So that is something to consider. And then that you do, again, have that finger choil so you can choke up and get finer detailed cutting done a little bit better than the K-bar knives. Then finally, the Rat Model 7 is going to have these really squared off, really blocky handle scales. They are micarta, so the wetter they get, the grippier they get, so that's a plus, but it's like holding a brick, and it's not very comfortable, so I did upgrade to the Knife Connection G10 handle scales that have bow drill divots in there as well. That really makes it, you know, take a whole new feel to the knife, much more comfortable, much more ergonomic. But again, these are going to be, I think, about $50 to $60, taking it from about a $70 knife to now $130 to $140 knife, depending on the color combination. So again, that's something you need to consider that you could do down the line. It's not unusable, but I would argue it's probably the least comfortable out of the box of all the knives we're looking at here today. All right, so now another major important part. How do you carry your knife? You have this survival knife, you picked it out, the knife performs great, you can bet your life on it, but now how do you carry it? How good is the sheath? And I want to discuss all that with you, not only showing you basic options, but then upgrades as well. Now, if you were to ask me personal preference, I prefer molded plastic or Kydex. It's a polymer material, it's very durable, it tends to be quieter than most nylon sheaths, it tends to be smaller in overall profile, and retain the blade easier. The blade doesn't want to fall out. It's not clunky and loud and rattly, and just has a better overall fit for me when I have Kydex or molded plastic sheaths when they're done right. And so just kind of kick this off to give you an example here. And the Rat Model 7 would come with a very similar type of sheath. Here is the standard nylon sheath on a Becker BK7. nylon, you know, it's PALS compatible. You got lots of options here, but it's super loud, very large, and take up a very large profile, and only has a button snap to retain the blade. The blade wants to cut that little strap off. It's really annoying and not something that I would want to hike all over creation with and use on a regular basis. So this is doable, but not my preference. So because the BK7's nylon sheath sucks, I went over to AZ Welke and got myself a rockin' Kydex sheath. Now, we've done a lot of Kydex in the past from AZ Welke. They've even hooked you guys, the viewers, up, and they're doing that again. Now, it's just a small company. It's him and his wife. They're knocking it out, and they make great fit and finish at really good prices. You know, you can pay over $100 for a Kydex sheath. These guys are really, really reasonable depending on the setup that you get. This is a nice taco design, zero rattle. Love that, super solid, great thumb ramp, all kinds of different attachment options. This is all Kydex with a Blade Tech lock, so there's tons of options. We're gonna have a link in the description below over to their website, and they're hooking you guys, the viewers, up with a couple discount codes. So if you buy any BK7 related Kydex options, they're gonna give you 10% for the first 30 days with the discount code offered below, and then after that 30 days, they're gonna have a 5% for the foreseeable future when you type in that discount code when you're placing your purchase orders for any BK7 Kydex options that you may be going with over on their website. So check them out. Regardless if you want to build out your BK7 or any other knife that we're talking about today, they are a great option when you are looking for custom Kydex. Okay, so based off of that, we have some polymer options. So out of the gate, the Utica B6 will come with this molded plastic. It will come with a little carbide sharpener that I don't really like using. It tends to jack up the blade, but it is there. And it will come with a fire steel and striker included that are okay. I mean, it does the job. It wouldn't be my first choice. It'd be a backup to a backup. Now, some things to note though, still very loud, not really good retention. A little bit, but you can see I can easily pull that and it'll want to pop off. And the belt attachment is right here, this metal belt clip, which is strong and durable, but you can see that if it's riding on my belt, we have almost half the knife up above sticking into my ribs and is just not as easy to pull and draw in a quick scenario and just isn't quite my preference. So though it is a polymer sheath that it comes standard with, better than this nylon one, and I do like it better than the stock BK7 one, it's not my first choice either, just because of the lack of retention, mostly the loud rattling and the very high ride. So it's not fun to carry and is kind of difficult to draw when you're carrying it on your belt. Now here is, out of all of the stock sheaths, my favorite sheath on the Ka-Bar Turok. What we have here is that nice polymer, very well done, lots of good drainage holes, lots of lashing points, almost silent, very minimal rattle. We do have this nylon attachment with a very large belt loop that is ambidextrous. I can undo it and swap it for lefties, which is really nice. Good snap retention back there, but is not needed at all. Again, very quiet. Really good thumb ramp, really good retention point right here that I can pull off and deploy the blade. Very strong, very secure snap, and is going to ride very low on my belt, unlike, again, the Utica. Just to give you perspective here, here's your belt running through. You can see that this is nice and flush with your belt. This is going to be riding up extremely high. So that is something to consider. But out of the box, this thing is phenomenal and my favorite of all of these when you are talking about out of the box performance on the sheath. And I don't have the actual sheath on me, but again, the Rat Model 7 will come with a basic nylon sheath. That's okay, it's doable. But I have upgraded with combination of those handle scales with the knife connection Kydex sheath as well. Very awesome with a nice leather drop as well back here. Fire steel loop, retention screws, very, very nice setup. Again, about $30 to $40 if I remember correctly. So what started out as a $70 knife has now well surpassed $100 and is now going into like $40, $140, $150, $160 range depending on what you do. So things to consider, but again, has a lot of potential to really customize exactly how you want and get a very high quality item with money and time invested into the knife, particularly again through the knife connection, which I'll have links in the description below, where you can build out a Rat Model 7 exactly like what you see here. So there you have it today, folks. Thank you so much for coming over here. I really hope this video has shown you what you can get into when you have $100 or less to spend, pros and cons of each design, because each one has positives and negatives. Several of them you can upgrade over time if you wish, and really give yourself something that will last a lifetime and that you can rely on in that pinch situation that you hopefully will never have to deal with, that survival situation. And if not, you'll just have a great camp tool for backpacking, hiking, and camping. So guys, thank you so much for coming over here and supporting the channel, watching regularly. If you're a new viewer, I'd invite you to become part of the GT family and subscribe and hit that bell icon. You regular subscribers, thank you so much for coming week after week and watching this channel and supporting us by your views and purchasing through the links that we offer and just your support, guys. You guys are awesome. Check us out on all the relevant social media. That's a great way to see what's up and coming. Finally, always remember, stay equipped, stay prepared, and we'll see you out there.